Hello, I am Vitold and here is the new BMW F900GS, which, as you may be able to tell, made me pretty excited. And you guys know that it's not usual to make me get excited, especially about any smaller displacement motorcycles. We've often been hearing that some things cannot become better, or if they are good, it's okay to just keep them the way they are. I don't think they were good enough in the previous GS of the middleweight, and I call this saying a bull crap. It is not real, not true, and this bike here is the proof. So right now I will share with you my observations and honest feelings about riding this new 900 and having ridden all of its competitors that are on the market at the time of making this video. A disclaimer is that we are all different and your preferences, guys, may be different, so nothing here aside from the numbers will work for absolutely everyone. Keep that in mind, as we all also have our very own opinions in the end of the day. Mine's gonna be honest. I don't own any of the competitors of this bike, and I'm openly stating everything that crosses my mind when riding a given motorcycle, and even more sometimes. Alright then, so I haven't been the biggest fan of the previous mid-size GS generations overall. I've been mentioning that openly, not too much, but now, screw that. This thing even broke in 2 places. Despite that, I'm gonna show you that. But this is a very different creation with a different character. First of all, just look at it. There is no asymmetrical front light. Is that good or is that bad? I would say in this instance, that's good. If I were a manager of the GS brand at BMW, I would reserve the asymmetrical front light as a trademark of largest GS in the family. Good that BMW completely have let this design element go from the late 2023 with the GS 1300 R1300GS. So there is none of that even in the big GS anyway, which makes me still sad, but never mind. Right now, there is something truly new from BMW right here in front of your eyes that I honestly believe can shake the middleweight adventure segment that is extremely competitive right now. And let me explain what makes me so excited about this BMW. Now, except from the fact that it broke twice, but wait for that. It's gonna be the thing that I expected to be the crappiest part of the bike. Just as I considered it till now in the mid-size GS family, that particular element, so the engine. I will make a separate comparison of this F900GS and the previous GS, but I've got to tell you guys that I am glad that the new one is here with us, even though some parts I feel might have been better in the previous generation. Now, this F900GS has 105 horsepower and 93 Nm of maximum torque from its 895 cubic centimeter engine. And guys, let me tell you this, from one of the lamest powertrains there, this has officially evolved into one of the most freaking crazy ones. BMW have absolutely nailed it, I think, and I really have no bloody clue how. It may be due to lower weight, as it's at 219 kilograms with a tank full of fuel, so around 200 kilograms dry if you would ask me. There is over 10% more power than before, but the difference feels like 30–40% in power increase. It's an absolute volcano now, especially in that dynamic mode, when it's easily lifting the front wheel in the first gear when just accelerating casually, or maybe more excitingly than casually. And the traction control has its hands full. I cannot express my surprise enough about how great this engine is now. It's so explosive, it is so smooth, by the way, and it just gives this effortless feeling, and it's just enjoyable. I'm saying that it's within the top 3 in the segment now. I'm also ready to make the full mid-size adventure motorcycles comparison like I've done with the big ones, and man, BMW really have done their homework, so it's going to be an interesting one. Up to 100 or 120 kilometers per hour, there's nothing that I would need more from this engine. Above those speeds, you may start realizing that it's a 900cc bike, not a 1300, but up until then, it's great. Flexibility is okay for the power and displacement of this bike, but what's hidden here more than grabbed me by my heart, and that is the transmission. Never missed a gear, it works flawlessly, but what I really want to say is that the quick shifter is absolutely lovely. This thing just works. It gives you feedback, it is reliable and enjoyable, and again, how do I define it? First of all, it always does the job. Second of all, it's easy to operate by giving a bit of resistance along the way, but you always know when and that the next gear is engaged. It's also fairly smooth when changing gears. If you'd ask me to point you towards the perfect quick shifter today, I'll show you this one, an F900GS. It's really 10 out of 10, and again, you guys know, some of you at least, that I'm not throwing compliments for no reason. This combination here is actually really fantastic. There's also everything good with the clutch that grabs gradually, and the lever gives us a good feel, quite a mechanical feel actually, if you know what I mean. You probably don't, but that's likely the best description of how it feels to operate it. It feels like it does a lot of mechanical work deep in there. But let's get back to the powertrain for a moment. There's this golden chain, and that is okay in the segment, but you should know that the current setup of the riding modes is again something that BMW have clearly learned, as there are very, very clear differences in throttle response. In the road mode, everything is smooth, the bike is powerful and eagerly jumps forward, but without being too brutal. In rain on enduro, it's smooth, but in dynamic, that's where the magic happens. It just flies, regardless of the RPM you're keeping the engine at. I'm really so impressed. Heat management is pretty much perfect, even on warmer days. I really would be pushing this bike, and only if I would really pay attention, I could notice some heat coming to my left leg. And this is only because I wanted to feel something and to assess it, so I was focusing on it. At one point, the fans would come on, but I still wouldn't really feel any annoying heat, so a good bike for hot climate. But hey, there's one more thing, and it's the sound. This version, so the Trophy, comes with the factory-fitted aftermarket Akrapovic exhaust that, just like most comes from this manufacturer, is not the most exciting thing that you can equip your bike with. It's also road legal, so obviously then this, well, negatively impacts the sound-related experiences. But wait a second. Switch to the dynamic mode, stuff really changes. Damn me, it starts sounding like a proper V2 engine, and it's an inline-2 engine, so it starts sounding deep and it starts popping and cracking even when you just rev it, which is fantastic. I love that. Now you see that it's hard to not get excited about this F900GS. That's my, let's call it a weakness. I love the sound of a V-shaped engines, and this F900GS, it really has some balls there. And speaking of balls, sitting on the bike is interesting, as this version has raised handlebars by 2.4 centimeters because of having an equipment pack called Enduro Pro, and this suited me being 1 meter 83 centimeters tall or 6 feet tall. I wish it was a bit closer, this handlebar, to me, as I gotta lean slightly forward, and this is not ideal for me on this kind of bike. I mean, the handlebar is quite wide, giving a lot of control and also taking a lot of space, by the way, especially with those optional hand guards with metal bars incorporated into them. They look solid, but they stick out. Not terrible in traffic, but you better get used to the width. Now, the seat appears rather hard, and it in fact is on the harder side, but somehow it's one of those that are shaped right, at least for my bump. So once you're on it, it doesn't appear as hard anymore. That's the same story as with the new large GS, the 1300GS. Here in the 900GS, I wish it was just a bit flatter, as I either slide a bit forward on the seat or I'm sitting too much on the tank, and those balls may suffer when braking or riding over some rougher terrain, some potholes. But overall, it's fine for me despite the seat height being at 87 centimeters, which is all right, but I'd love it maybe 1 centimeter lower or somewhere there. Still, it's manageable for me without being able to flat-foot it while on both sides, while it clearly tells that F900GS wants to be considered more of an off-road motorcycle at the same time. Foot pegs are exactly where I would want them, and so is their height. I really wouldn't even notice them there, which means that they are perfectly located for my preference. The angle is totally fine for me, and the brake lever also, despite being loose in this bike. With just under 1,000 kilometers on the clock, it has this movable element that lets us raise it if we want to. It's also fine for me to operate the brake and gear levers, which is not very common in the segment, with the levers being usually too high in relation to the foot pegs in these bikes, which makes it hard to work. But here it's comfortable, and I can really easily reach over both levers with my feet. Gear lever here is adjustable too. Nice, very good BMW. It makes me really glad, in fact. Now, about comfort, if you've ever wondered about what the world's top and most comfortable office chair is, it's this one here called G11 that's electrically adjustable. These are electrically adjustable office chairs that Power Seats make. They've also had some Rolls-Royce office chairs, I mean literally from the Rolls-Royce, so yeah, just check them out. Talking about comfort. One more place where the bike is giving us hints about it being ready to be taken to some rougher adventures is the 21-inch front rim. The one in the rear is 17 inches and those are spoked wheels and the tires are tubeless, which is great in my opinion. However, one of the things I would like to be improved is how hard it is to turn the front wheel using the handlebar. I wish it was easier there, it would be a little bit easier to maneuver. Now, following up on the topic of off-road style, let's talk about suspension, which in this bike, with the Enduro Pro package, offers more adjustability. And there is really a lot of it in the rear and in the front as well. It's all accessible by knobs. And this is great and it is smart and we don't need tools to play with the settings, which is very, very good. So the suspension is on the stiffer side, but at the same time it's around the area of being just fine. In the front it's got 23 centimeters of travel and in the rear 21.5 centimeters. Ground clearance is for now unknown. Couldn't find any info on that. Now, I wish it was slightly softer, the suspension by default, but it's all fine and it would never happen that my back would get suddenly struck, causing me any kind of pain. It is very capable and composed. Not perfect though, and there may be more comfortable bikes in the segment, but by not that much. Still, there is a competitor that offers electrically adjustable suspension, mind you, so it can go a little bit further than here. Anyhow, this one here never bottomed out. It handled some very mild off-roading, but what surprises me is that the front end does not dive as much when braking. So it gives the feeling of this bike being more planted rather than all over the place like some others. This is unusual and this also impresses me. Then if you want to jump using a speed bump at speed, just do it and the bike will be fine, and you may be also fine if you stand on the pegs. And here again, thanks to that Enduro Pro pack and a raised handlebar, I can pretty comfortably ride while standing on the pegs, which almost no mid-size adventure motorcycle can give me nowadays. In my opinion, this suspension is fine for long trips and also to get crazy around the city and keep the bike really flatter than I would expect at least. Too many, this may be a sweet spot, I think. All right, so let's talk about one of the most important parts, so handling. Here, F900GS is not the leader in the segment, in my opinion. What is good is that it's always neutral. It just does what you want it to do without a fight. At higher speeds, you've got to push it a little bit, but it complies and it just changes directions as you want it to. But it's not super quick and super effortless here. At lower speeds, it's balanced fine, but then turning that front wheel could have been easier, it could have been lighter. It's under control, but it could be better and feel lighter again. Then if you use the brakes when at a certain lean, the bike remains perfectly under control and it doesn't straighten up unnecessarily. And the same when accelerating in the corners. It goes exactly when you want it to, and this is very, very important. So it passes, but it could be better in the end in terms of handling. There are bikes that I feel more confident on in the corners, so there is place for improvement. I really like that despite this pretty rough look, missing the crash bars, no rear rack, even no center stand, there's a lot of useful tech already. Yeah, weight savings, and cost savings too, while keeping the price up there, by the way. Same with a 14.5 liter, rather small fuel tank. But in fact, what matters is range, and this has a lot to do with how each of us rides. Anyhow, I love keyless access. That is unusual in the segment, especially with a keyless fuel cap. Good job. There is cornering ABS, there is traction control, cruise control, riding mode, front LED light that is not cornering though. Heated grips, they may be there. Tire pressure monitoring system may be there too. I just cannot understand why the windscreen is not adjustable. This stock one is shit and it gives no protection. Up to 100 kilometers we may be surviving as there's not much turbulence, but above that, forget about a highway ride. For that, you need to buy a taller windscreen, but of course it is still not adjustable. So what the hell actually? This is important. Also, the onboard computer and the display are the same as they used to be, which screams again. What does it scream? It screams cost savings. That's what it screams it does. I am not mad about the switches on the handlebar, that they're still the same as they've been doing their job for years, and they look fine and they feel solid to me. Still no backlight. But in the digital era, why not make the at least displays, animations a tiny bit more exciting? All right, let's let it go. I mentioned in the beginning that the bike broke, and that is true. So far, only Ducatis would be broken during my rides, and once some BMW didn't want to start, there was an what a surprise, F900XR. So close to a F900GS, but that's not what happened. In this one, the rear lights were broken, and they were constantly appearing as in the braking stage, so in full red without ever dimming themselves. I got a notification on the display, which I appreciate being there, and that is smart, so thank you BMW for thinking of that. They clearly anticipated it, perhaps. No, I'm just being mean. But I wish everything was all right with it in the first place. Also, the message appeared after I had already left the dealership, and I really wouldn't want to go back. After all, brake light, that's not a big deal, who cares? Yeah, I know. But there is this new way of incorporating taillights into the blinkers that I do not love, as it makes both of those blinkers less visible. So here, perhaps because of the loose rear brake lever, which I consider the second broken thing, perhaps some sensor got damaged, and that would cause this behavior. Still, remember, under 1,000 kilometers. Likely, in the end, it's not a big deal. It's probably just a mechanical issue. So either somebody dropped the bike, or God knows what happened to that thing. It was just not screwed. And I could see the screw, there was a loose screw that was not holding the lever in place. And so likely it was not the bike's fault. So how do I sum it all up? Now, this new F900GS is seriously fun to ride in terms of performance and how planted it feels, thanks to not much front-end dive. I also like the way it looks, and I appreciate that it handles fine and is comfortable enough without being wobbly. On the other hand, it could be more comfortable still, and could also handle a little bit better and be easier to turn. In the end, I feel that it can be a great offering for someone who wants to ride like crazy on short distances, on tarmac, or for someone who wants to have a bike that's solid in every aspect and that can do fine during shorter travels, including some rougher paths. I'm giving it a 7.5 out of 10 and plan to make a comparison between the outgoing F850GS and perhaps also maybe even the R1300GS, so the bigger brother, if you guys would want that. If any of you already has this new F900GS or has just ridden one, please do share your feelings in the comments. Have a great one and see you in the other videos.